Right, so a lot of people ahead of the general election, whilst surmising what a Keir Starmer-led Labour government might look like, and especially with the Tony Blair comparisons being bandied about for as long as they had been, encouraged no doubt by Blairite phantom turned Jeffrey Epstein's shopping buddy Peter Mandelson haunting proceedings from the shadows. Invariably, that comparison turned to one of warfare. Blair will be forever defined by the Iraq War. So perhaps it's a sign of things to come that it is a particularly telling course of action that despite being told repeatedly that there is no money left for Labour to put the country back together after 14 years of the Tories, that he earned the name Sir Keir Starmer for refusing to do away with the two-child benefit cap and keep kids in poverty, Starmer still managed to find the money to put together a military aid package for Ukraine within days of taking power. He can find money for war, but not the poorest children, or frankly anything else you care to think of that there is apparently no money left for.
The Chancellor's first intervention today isn't to say, look, how awful is everything and what a mess the Conservatives left, even though they did leave a historic mess.
Was there no money left?
Well, there was no note in my drawer at all, so maybe they can't afford the notepaper to write a note on, who knows. But the Chancellor will set out today a positive, optimistic message about the strong approach we're going to take to stimulate growth and get the economy back on track, because that is the only route to sustainable public finances, not continuing to increase the tax burden on working people.
What are you going to do?
Right, so that was Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury as he is now, talking about not being left a note by the Tories saying there's no money left, by quipping perhaps they couldn't afford the note paper. Oh, ha ha, how droll. Discussing Rachel Reeves's big speech today to lay out Labour's plans to achieve growth, despite clearly not investing any money in anything, it seems. Yet still she has announced plans to build 1.5 million houses this Parliament, but what type of housing, whose money, and will it matter, and where it is, and the return of mandatory local house building targets, which is great if she's put the money in for local councils to deliver on that. And then relaxing planning restrictions as well on what she considers the ugly parts of the Green Belt. It's not what I want to hear. What are the ugly parts? Have you ever seen an ugly part of the Green Belt? An end to de facto building of onshore wind farms. I have no issue with that one. But again, how is it going to be financed? A new planning policy framework to come, so we'll find out in due course, I dare say. But we'll judge that on its merits when it appears. But ultimately, how is all of this going to be paid for? That is the outstanding question, really. It's also not anything that hasn't already previously been mentioned in one form or other. The question of how Labour is going to pay for stuff looms large, especially in light of the fact they keep saying they aren't going to spend big because there's no money left. If they weren't refusing to tax the rich, they would be free to print more money. The adage of bankrupting the nation and there being no money left is a false one, when the Bank of England simply has to type numbers into a computer and voila, new money is born. Taxation is a brake on inflation that allows government to do that, so claims of not being able to afford this, that, or the other is false, and Labour singing from the same hymn sheet as the Tories on that doesn't show a dramatic shift from their way of ruining the country to Labour doing little different or little better. The primary example of that, the policy area that did come up often in the general election campaign, was the cruel two-child benefit cap policy. It is a cruel penny-pinching measure the Tories brought in, supposedly to punish feckless parents for having kids they could not afford. But the reality of it is, it punishes the child in question. And I don't know about you, but I don't accept punishing kids with policy measures. Darren Jones, in another interview he did with Good Morning Britain, said there's no money to do any of this. Former Scottish Labour leader Kezia Dugdale, she was on a Sky News interview. She was doing the press bit, I believe, the newspaper bit, admitting that the pressure for Labour to act on this will be immense, but that Starmer and Reeves won't do it because, well, they don't want to send jitters through the market. Well, God forbid the economy have the jitters. Better keep starving those kids instead, then. Well, it's all about choices at the end of the day, though, isn't it? Ending the two-child benefit cap would lift 250,000 kids out of poverty. The policy applies right now to some 2 million kids. If it doesn't happen, the IFS predict another 670,000 kids will be impacted by this policy by the end of this new Parliament. Ending this would cost £3.4 billion a year. Sure, that sounds like a lot of money. But Starmer and Reeves had no issue with increasing defence spending from 54 billion even, I'll get my words out, to 87 billion across the duration of this Parliament, because that works out in an extra £6.6 billion a year. Why not just halve that and scrap the two-child benefit cap? What are we defending with an increased defence budget, if not the people of this country? Therefore, why leave so many in poverty by choice, and the very youngest in society at that? Just one example of what could be done, taxing the rich. Again, we come back to that, would be another choice that could be made. Rachel Reeves constantly ruled out a wealth tax, could not see the purpose of it. Well, lifting kids out of poverty would be a purpose to it, wouldn't it? People who don't want for anything being made to pay a little bit more. Well, they still won't want for anything. But the poorest kids would be lifted out of poverty. And that's a good thing. That'd give them some good press. Even I'd praise them for it. But all of this precludes what Starmer and Reeves say about the public finances. Their mantra about the damage the Tories have done to the public purse being true. Yet if we can afford to give away cash and aid to other countries, the choice to let kids starve here becomes all the more stark and surely becomes all the more unforgivable. So in light of that, what has Keir Starmer done with regard to Ukraine then? And I'll start with a tweet he had literally just put out at the time I was writing this, which given what I've already said that's remarkably relevant, I thought. He posted images from a Ukrainian hospital, a bit of footage, saying, "Attacking innocent children, the most depraved of actions. We stand with Ukraine against Russian aggression. Our support won't falter." Nice that he cares so much about Ukrainian kids while leaving so many of ours in poverty, I thought. I also won't hold my breath that he'll condemn Israel and post images of kids in a Gaza hospital whilst doing so either, but I'll park that particular sentiment there on this occasion. You see, straight after the very first cabinet meeting that Starmer held, our new Defence Secretary, John Healey, was dispatched to Ukraine, literally day 2 of him being in the job, to press the flesh with Zelensky, who didn't even need to bring out his begging bowl this time. Here's a Guardian excerpt. New Defence Secretary John Healey announced a fresh British military aid package for Ukraine on Sunday as he visited the southern port city of Odessa and met with his counterpart Rustem Umerov. The move is designed to reassure Ukraine and demonstrate to Moscow the UK military backing remains unchanged after last week's change of government and ahead of this week's NATO summit, where additional military help for Kiev will be discussed. Healey said the UK is united for Ukraine and the Labour Minister promised to reinvigorate Britain's support by stepping up supplies of vital military aid as part of an effort to help resist Russian aggression for as long as it takes. Britain will supply 250,000 large 50 caliber rounds of ammunition, 10 of its AS-90 artillery guns, which have a theoretical range of up to 25 kilometres, and 90 Brimstone ground attack anti-tank missiles from its own stocks. The Ministry of Defence said that Healey had immediately asked for extra support to be provided to Ukraine, which was readily available and meets their needs for the battlefield as the war continues its 3rd year. Umerov said on his Telegram channel that he highly appreciated Healey's visit, given it was his 2nd working day in the job and his 1st trip abroad. In addition to that, Declassified UK have stated that the aid package will also include 50 small military boats, 40 demining vehicles and 61 bulldozers. Peace talks and diplomacy cost less and more weapons of war, but equally if we have the cash to send this lot to Ukraine, why are our kids still in poverty? I'm not even saying here actually that this is the choice that has to be made either, any more than the example I gave earlier, or should be the one made. Though I question the form of aid we are sending to Ukraine, definitely. It certainly isn't going to bring about an end to the war by sending more arms. But it does illustrate the point I've been making since the beginning of this video, and that is that our kids being kept in poverty is a choice. The money is there for weapons, but not for food for kids. Is that genuinely what Starmer's Labour is saying? Is that really the position they want to take? Because it seems like it to me. And if that is the case, how are they any different to the Tories they've just replaced? The party of the working class, my backside. So thus far, in Labour's first few days in government, they've declared kids can stay hungry, but more aid can go to Ukraine, though that aid is basically bombs and bullets. Our kids stay hungry to pay for that is one way that it can be looked at. Closer ties with Israel have been announced as well, despite them conducting themselves in Gaza like Russia has in Ukraine, so the politics of amoral hypocrisy is written large there. And trashing the Green Belt if deemed to be ugly, and what is the standard of beauty being used? What is the measure for Green Belt locations? I would be concerned if I live in a Green Belt area or near one. In all likelihood to benefit private house builders and developers because Reeves won't spend public money to invest in it. So who will those houses eventually be for? When you've built 1.5 million of them, if you even deliver, because successive government after government after government, no matter whether it's been Tory or Labour, have failed on that. So far, I'm so predictably disappointed. We deserve better than another 5 years of economic stagnation and feeling no better off, and this very much seems to be the way things are heading already. But don't for 1 minute believe there's no money, because there is always money. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation showing this move over arms to Ukraine. It's hardly Starmer's first demonstration that he doesn't want to lift kids out of poverty, nor has he wished to for quite some time, as his football fandom over the England Lionesses reaching the final of the Women's World Cup last August saw him call for a new bank holiday in their honour, and them all to be made dames, which would be very nice as well, wouldn't it? But again, that would have cost more to deliver than ending the 2-child benefit cap. But there's no money left if you ask them now, of course. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.